Chandon Sullivan is going to be on the radio show within the next 45 minutes. Now, I've yet to meet Chandon. I'm looking forward to it, but it's fascinating to me because I've just seen cornerbacks all of their careers here, there, and everywhere. Chandon has never missed a game in 3 with Green Bay. And he's playing, he ain't playing Jair Alexander snaps when Jair's healthy, but he's that 3, he's that nickel. He's playing a lot of snaps, and he gets scrappy too, and he's never missed a game and never missed a postseason game. That's astounding to me. How did that factor in when you signed him?
No, it's absolutely right. You talk about moments. The moment he sat down in my office, he sits in the chair, and you understand why that guy's never missed 3 games. There's a quiet intensity to him. He tells his family story. You know how he was brought up, how he was raised, and you talk about a competitive spirit, a growth mindset, and a never turn it down attitude. That's what he's all about. And you talk about a position, nickel cornerback. You're in there, you're making run fits like a linebacker sometimes. And for him to not miss a game, and you said it exactly right. He's out there covering, but he's also sticking his nose in there and doing those things. And again, he's that type of competitor, and that's what he brings to this team. We're happy to have him.
Yeah, the last time I think we chatted on the radio was right around the draft, and when I was talking to people whose opinions I trust outside of the building, not in the NFL, about players and their former players, about draft picks, and reading what everybody can read, there was a common thread here: scholars of the game. I mean, it's like when people are like, well, Ty Chandler should have gone here, or the Gopher guy should have gone here. The common thread seemed to be scholars of the game, smart, like Booth Jr., man. He's all ACC academic. Things like that. Would you look at Sullivan as a scholar of the game, just sees it fluidly and quickly?
Absolutely. I mean, we always talk about here the what and the why. And so when you're watching the film, that's the what. And what's he doing? This guy's always in the right position. He uses good leverage versus receivers and things like that. Well, the why is, why is this person able to do that? And some people, it's just amazing quickness, foot speed, instincts, whatever they talk about. With him, it's a lot of those things, but it's also incredible detail, the preparation he puts into it. And again, we've had coaches that were with him in Green Bay, Mike Pett and Mike Smith, who could vouch for that. And again, adding people like that to your defense is always a valuable thing.
So in closing on Sullivan, so signing him via free agency, you in essence are betting on the value of the option meshing well with your needs and schemes. Is that a fair way to put it?
It's a fair way to put it. I feel like you've been in your Wall Street terms this summer. I appreciate that.
I'm setting it up for the word bet, because you are betting that this option will fit here with all the commodities around it, and it will flourish. Now, the reason I use the word bet is there's a USA Today story that I believe came out within the last week, focused on Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and the young lady who I can't remember her name. The young lady who wrote it did a really, really good job. But there was part of it where you called draft picks bets, which I loved, and it has nothing to do with being racetrack raised. Because with all the picks and all the free agents, the first thing that came to my mind, having been a racetrack announcer for almost 30 years, is you're going to lose bets. But the question is, what types of bets are you losing, and what types are you winning over the long haul? And that's fascinating.
Absolutely. And obviously that's what draws somebody like with a mind like myself and other people to this game. But first I wanted to start off by saying, I know a lot of times I do this, and I'm guilty of this. I talk about players and assets and commodities. First and foremost, this is a people business, and these players are great humans. They're emotional. They have families and all those things. So I always like to separate that side. You can talk about that in the high level without necessarily demeaning the players. But going back to what you're saying, every pick, every contract has some sort of risk outcome. It could be whether you get a first-round pick and there's some odds historically that player is an elite starter, a Pro Bowl, and some odds that player is just a good starter, some odds that player is maybe a backup. And so what you want to do when you're watching the player is you want to, honestly, using the evidence that you have in this building, and we take evidence from our scouts, from our coaches, from the models and all these analytics and different things, and we set a baseline. So let's say, hey, at this pick number, there is some baseline value that we need. And then given all the evidence we have, what are the odds we think this person meets this baseline? Now, once you do that, you're comfortable with the risk. It's like purchasing anything. You're just comfortable with where you're getting in, the entry point. After that point, we don't talk about that anymore, right? It doesn't become a risk thing anymore. It's more, okay, they're in our building. We're going to do everything in our power to overcome those odds. Like I want to be wrong. If I thought a player was going in the 6th round, I hope that I'm wrong about everything we did. And we're going to provide resources with our player performance staff and Kevin and all their development to get everything out of that player to overcome. All of these guys at this point in their life have overcome every single odd, right? Every 6th grader writes a letter and says they want to be an NFL player, right? And these guys, every year, they kept writing that letter, and they kept their dream alive, and they're here. And so I certainly never want to say that we make these odds limiting their ceiling or growth. It's just kind of how you have to be to conduct business.
Whether it's John Lynch with San Francisco, Andrew Berry, and their staffs with Cleveland, and now you and your staff, is the way you approach free agency and or the draft, do you believe it's antithetical to the way a majority of teams approach things?
I don't. A lot of times we talk about and all this. To me, it's just marketing or just a different. I might say different words, right? I have an economics background. I've worked on Wall Street, so I might use certain words. But the best part about being around people like Kyle and John and Andrew Berry and all the people I've been so fortunate to learn from is they communicate those ideas. It was my job, honestly, to take their ideas and translate it to math. Math is just a language like anything else, and so ultimately, I think a lot of draft rooms are conducted this way. They're just maybe not communicated in that exact way. I think some of the implementation of our ideas might be a little bit different, a little bit more, this is just firmly what I believe. This is how I got here. So there isn't a point in the process where I'm going to break from what we do. This is our process, and this is where we're going to make our hay.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the general manager for the Minnesota Vikings, 9 to noon. It's 11:01. So to close on the bet portion of the equation, and again, this is in a feature written about Kwesi in USA Today within the last week, and him off the cuff saying like draft picks, free agents, whatever, they're like bets. So again, like Kwesi said, I mean these people are humans with families. We understand that, but for the sake of the situation, if you keep winning the big bets, well, then correct me if I'm wrong here, that's how you win the Super Bowl. I mean, so it's like I'm looking at this year and say rounds 1, 2, and 3, rounds 1, 2, and 3, rounds 1, 2, and 3, all through your career. Mm-hmm. Then this year, Harrison Phillips, Jandon Sullivan, let's just stop right there. Yep. So like Davis, the right guard, that would be a bet, but if you got $100, that might be like 35 of the 100, but it's still a bet. So if you can win on those big opinions, the big equations, with the way you get there, then correct me if I'm wrong, but that establishes the foundation. And now others, maybe those of the old school variety, who are hearing and seeing things they've never heard or seen, the buy-in factor becomes universal.
Exactly right.
Right.
And that's exactly right. Ultimately, we're just trying to make sound decisions. And I love how you phrase it. You want to win big bets, but it's funny when you learn in trading. When I first started out, how you survive is to not lose your shirt. Yeah. Right? So to stay at the poker table long enough. If you stay there long enough, ultimately you're going to win on some big bets. So right. A lot of it's just trying not to make the big mistake. So early in those early round picks, making sure that you're sure about the person, the player, the character, and what you're getting in the building. Same thing in free agency. And ultimately that's what you try to do to stay at the table long enough to hopefully we host this Lombardi.
Are you, or shall I say, what excites you, Kwesi, about the practices with the 49ers?
First and foremost, it's football.
Yeah.
So I love practice. I love when the pads are on. I love just seeing rep by rep guys get better. But obviously, there's a special emotional attachment for me with the 49ers and just the beginning of my career and seeing all those guys. I'm going to get to dap up Eric and Jimmy Ward and all those guys, great players that but I knew them as rookies, teaching them player finance, and just honestly so proud of the men they've become, not just as players but as men off the field. And then seeing John and Adam Peters and Rand Carthon, and just these people are like family to me.
That's great.
We text all the time. Anytime they need anything, anytime I need anything, them, I can lean on them. So it's going to be great, but don't get this twisted. It is going to be competitive. That team is coming to take something from you, and we're trying to be the type of team that doesn't let people take anything from them. So that's partly what I'm excited to. It's the team that was in the NFC Championship game, a whisper away from being in the Super Bowl. It's a good litmus test for us and see where we're trying to go.
So with Kyle Shanahan, their coach, my nickname for him the last 3.5, 4 years on this radio show has been Next Level Shanny. And I like how it sounded, but he just, when I would watch their all-22 up to games against us, generally speaking, to memorize numbers. But then I'm watching things with Juszczyk and Mostert, and then Breida comes in, and they do it the other way. And I'm like, damn, man, I mean, this is next level what this guy's doing. And I'm not trying to be a coach here. It's just the meshing and mixing of personnel and the changing of the same play just the other way at the perfect time in the same game. Kyle's fantastic as a coach, isn't he?
Incredible. You know, we nicknamed him Beethoven. He's a special dude. You know, again, I've learned so much from him. A lot of the ideas that I was able to translate into our models and math were just him just watching film and just saying things into the air, and he just can't help but teach you. He sees the game in such a special way. He's a gifted person, somebody that I still lean on to this day and really appreciate. But he's a different dude, and you can tell. You know, always talk about, you know, seeds and trees, and look at his tree of coaches.
Yep.
Talk about coaches who identify other great coaches and raise other great coaches. I was fortunate enough to be in those draft rooms with Saleh and Mike McDaniel and LaFleur and all those guys. And those are just people, you didn't know those names 6-7 years ago, and now you do. For the Minnesota Vikings, the organized team activities, calm. Happy feelings on the walk up to the training camp. That's en vogue. Are you, so with the calm nature of things around here and practice officially beginning tomorrow, are you pining for like a contract dispute or maybe a holdout to spice things up? I mean, ain't talking about anything weird off the field, but can we get a contract dispute or like a little 2-day holdout just to spice things up around here?
No, if that might be spicy for you guys. No, we have to be ready in a leadership position for anything that comes at you. But during those quiet times, you appreciate them. It's probably like having a young child when they're taking a nap. You're probably pretty happy about it, but you know that the screams are coming soon, so you should be ready for it at all costs.
With training camp practices now, the walkthroughs will begin right around noon. Okay, so that's new. The assumption here is the players are going to get here a little later than maybe in the past, and then start their business, do the walkthrough. Short respite, then right into practice. So I'm sure as we move along, I'll learn more about that. But when it comes down to the training camp schedule, 7-on-7s here, this here, same thing with the walkthrough. Do you have input on that? And if so, what is it?
You know, I think I said at my first press conference, one of the keys to building a great organization is hire incredible people and get out of their way. And so, you know, first and foremost, that starts with Kevin O'Connell, who, you know, you talk about somebody who's so detailed in intention. There's a reason why behind everything they do. So I'm a curious person. So, you know, he's giving his plan, and I'll ask a question. And the first question, the level of detail you get on the why, it's like there's not a second question coming because this guy's got it covered. And then you hire somebody like Tyler Williams. Yeah. And, you know, his attention to detail, his thoroughness, his process, and how that evolved into our training. I trust him implicitly. So there's a reason why I know he's researched it, I know he's studied it, I know he's ready to stand for what he believes in. And so really, I have an overseeing, I guess, in a sense. They run things by me, but again, they're just so good at it. The why is always so profound and so well thought out that I kind of just stay out of the way.
Kwesi, have you heard a fair amount from January through now, specifically when you get into organized team activities and schedules? Well, the Rams did it this way. Well, we did it this way. And it's not a disparaging remark like, well, screw that, we're doing it the Vikings way. Yeah. Well, no, they were Super Bowl champions, run by a coach who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, pulling things out of players that nobody's ever been able to pull out of them. So if it was the Rams way in a copycat league, then it can be the Vikings way too.
You know, it's funny. One of the things I like to say when I get up in front of the room is I don't want to hear that this is how we've always done it. And that'll happen even, and I'll say, hey, we did this in Cleveland or we did this in San Francisco. But immediately following that, with no breath, is the reason why. Yeah. So there better be an intuitive reason why you're doing something, not just that we did it this team. Now, if you take a lot of things from championship organizations, you're probably doing a good thing, but you always want to make sure you're connected to that foundational reason for why they're doing it.
Football-related question, time for two more. Are you guys, when I say are you guys good with your tight ends, it's way, way early to ask for that, ask about that. But, I mean, the offense has so much diversification. And Irv Smith Jr. coming back, I mean, it's off an arduous year for him. So there's much to be revealed, but I mean, Irv specifically as a run blocker, I mean, which is really underrated with him in my opinion. Great to have him back, but like your tight end stable, the former Ram, Johnny Munt, I got all his albums. Then you have Ben Ellefson, and Zach Davidson's been around a couple of years. Then you have some more. Do you believe at this stage, say you keep 3 tight ends, do you believe that they're here, or is that yet to play itself out?
I would say it's yet to play itself out. I will say that we love the direction of that group. And to your point, they have a lot of different skill sets that can complement each other. And in this offense, Kevin is, again, so bright, in how he diversifies and uses different aspects. Right now, we're about to put the pads on.
Yep.
So for me to speak about anything before we put the pads on is a little, you shouldn't really do that because you don't have full information. So, we like what we see. Guys have come back in great shape. We talk about Davidson, just Irv, just walking by and the look in their eye, and they're like, I've been working.
Yeah.
And you can see it.
You got tight ends who can run.
No question. So we're really excited to get them out there and see it. And obviously, as always, I have a dedicated personnel staff ready to take that information, adapt, evolve, and grow this roster to our goals.
Oh, last one. This, by the way, is your verbal walkthrough. The practice is coming up like 5 minutes from now in front of the assembled media. So I'm happy to be the conduit. Lastly, when I wrote this, I was like, trip on this. I mean, this is fantastic, okay? So stop smiling for a second, please, because I want to see if I can make you smile, okay? You have a big say in getting the roster to 53. Then the practice squad and bidding for players and doing all that. Seriously, how cool is that you have maybe not the say, but a big say in establishing a 53-man roster? That's cool. You didn't smile. You didn't like my bet.
I know it sounds, I beat it probably into the ground, but everything we do here is collaborative.
Yeah.
I know what the title says and all those things, but
were you part of it in Cleveland or San Francisco?
I was a part of in Cleveland in some of those final discussions for sure.
My fault.
And so, ultimately, we try and make decisions here downhill. We don't want to make them uphill. And so we try and build consensus, get the room understanding why we're doing what we're doing. If you have a full room of people that you've hired and trust them and they completely disagree with what you're doing, that's not probably the best way to operate. And
right.
So we have a really collaborative process. And so I'm excited to do that. And obviously this role is a little bit different, and I probably do get to break a little ties with Kevin, who sits right next to me in that capacity. But I'm excited just to get going and see what these 2022 Vikings look like.
But if you have a room and a majority of people are disagreeing with you, I would see the serendipity. I would find the serendipity in it. That's fantastic. No, and here's why. Because they have the confidence to say they disagree with you, which leads to better communication, which leads to better teams.
Absolutely. You nailed it. And that's the culture we're trying to create here. I don't view that I have every answer. I want a room full of people willing to speak up, show your evidence, show why you believe what you believe, but there is a meritocracy for ideas what we're doing at the Vikings, and I think you nailed it perfectly.
Love your squad, man, and can't wait to watch training camp, joint practices, preseason, and everything. Appreciate you, and have a good day.
Always a good time, PA. Thanks.
Thank you, bud.